Hey everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today, I'm gonna be answering some questions from Reddit. I spend some time lurking over there. Most of the time, it's just to get ideas for videos. I wanna see what the masses are asking questions on and see if I can make a topic on it, or if I already have, if I can make it better. But today, we're simply gonna go through 5 questions that I saw pop up on Reddit recently, and we're gonna answer them. If this is your first time here, hi, my name's Justina. I am a strength and conditioning coach based out of New York City. My mission is to make fitness and health information accessible to all. If that sounds good to you, I would love for you to stick around, so feel free to hit that subscribe button down below. But now, let's sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and we're gonna dive into these questions. Is my understanding of calories in, calories out flawed? I'll start by saying I am 4'11" and currently on a bit of a health journey because I just turned 36 in December and I'm suddenly staring down the barrel of 40 and worried about my heart and liver. I have heard calories in, calories out spouted a lot in weight loss conversation. I have an extremely knowledgeable and fit older brother who loves denouncing weight loss to this easy and attainable science of burn off more than you eat. Yes, that's sarcasm. For a long time, I bought into this though. Whenever my weight got a bit too high, I would start counting calories and slowly see the 1 to 2 pounds a week shed off. I am doing this right now, actually. Okay, here is the part that I'm starting to question. I have been going to the gym with a gal pal of mine. She is of average height and has a larger frame with big legs and bottom. When we are on the treadmill, she burns 50 to 60 more calories for the same workout just by virtue of being a bigger person. And then suddenly, calories in, calories out is far more convoluted. 3,500 calories to lose a pound, but I have to do more to burn the calories than she does. And the smaller you get, the lower your BMR is. So now trying to hit a deficit to lose pounds becomes hard. So we both have to burn 3,500 calories for a pound, but because I'm so small, I gotta work much harder to burn them. Please shed some light. Whew. All right, let's quickly get on the same page about a few things here. So in terms of energy balance, or we'll say calories in, calories out, because that's the terminology she's using, that's typically a term that people use when they're talking about like being in a cut or being in a negative energy balance, being in a deficit. There we go, we landed on it. So the only way that it has been shown that humans on planet Earth can lose weight, or lose fat, that is, you can lose weight by chopping off a limb if you want. Please don't do that. But the only way that studies have shown to lose fat is by being in a negative energy balance, meaning that you are taking in less energy or calories than you are expending. It is that simple, but implementation is not simple, if that makes sense. Because the thing is that people will calculate their BMR, their basal metabolic rate, and then they'll guesstimate in based on different activity levels and what different calculators say, what they burn day in and day out. But we have to remember that that number is not consistent day to day. It is affected by a ton of other things. How was your sleep? What did you eat the day before? Where are your stress levels? Are you currently menstruating? So even if you are tracking meticulously, you're still like, no matter what, you're really just always playing a guessing game. And I'm not trying to say that to make you frustrated or feel like all of the work that you've been doing has been a waste of time. We just need to remember that things like counting our calories and, estimating how much we've burned in a workout or during the day, like these are just tools that are estimations of what's actually going on in our body. If anything, I really hope that that gives you a little bit of freedom in your approach when you're in a deficit and you're working toward a weight loss goal. Now let's move into the next kind of question or claim of needing to burn 3,500 calories to lose a pound of fat. According to all of my recent studies and research, that is still technically true. I haven't seen anything to show that that's disproven. Now, before someone is like, it's not that simple, it's not that easy, I didn't say it was simple. I already said it's not simple to implement weight loss. On the metabolic level, on the cellular level, 100%, it's very simple, the concept, right? But implementation in our bodies, it's way more complex. Because we already talked about, there's a lot more than just nutrition that can affect your metabolism, your metabolic rate, and your deficit. So if you have a calorie counter saying, okay, if you eat in this deficit for X number of days, you're guaranteed to lose X number of pounds, there's no guarantee in that, because there's so many other factors going on with your body that you don't have control over. Or maybe it will happen, I don't know. But again, nutrition is just one piece of the puzzle. This is typically why if someone does have a weight loss goal, I'm going to broaden their scope of what's important, making sure we're talking about fiber, making sure we're talking about protein, making sure we're talking about sleep, stress management, how much they're moving throughout their day. There's a lot of other things that go into this besides just, I need to have a deficit of 3,500 calories to lose 1 pound. Like, yes, but how do we actually implement that, and how do we shift the focus from only on the numbers, because there's so much there you can't control and it's going to drive you insane. Okay, and then we have this concept of like bigger and smaller bodies and energy expenditure being different. Really logically for a second, right? Let's think about this. A bigger body has more fiber and tissue to maintain than a smaller body. Tissues and fibers and that whole body system, that takes more energy to move and maintain than a smaller amount, right? So while exercising on, let's say, a treadmill, that bigger body, it's going to take more energy, aka more calories, to do the same thing as a smaller body. Now, I know that this is a very common gripe in the petite fitness community. Like, oh, I'm so small and it takes me so much more effort to burn the same amount of calories as someone who's really, 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 really big. Yeah. The reason it bothers me is because it's always coming from a place of like, it's so unfair. It's so unfair that this person who weighs 500 pounds can eat 5,000 calories a day, but if I do that, I will gain weight. Is it unfair? Because once that body, like let's say that person does have a weight loss goal, once they get down to your size, like the same thing's gonna happen. I think what it is that annoys me is that there's just, and it's not the people asking these questions, it's just this perpetuation of like misinformation or like lack of context that confuses people about just like basics of how our bodies work. When you really break it down, like it is so basic, and I hope that you can see that. More meat sac requires more energy to maintain. Less meat sac requires less energy to maintain. Also, burning an extra 50 to 60 calories on the treadmill is literally nothing. Like it's what, like 4 or 5 almonds? It's just one of the big reasons why I don't love thinking about exercise in this way, just as a way to like manually rip calories off your body, because it creates a lot of comparison person to person, which I don't think is helpful. And it also just reinforces this kind of concept of like exercise as punishment, exercise as a tool just to get your body smaller, like not something that I vibe with. There's a lot of other reasons that you can exercise, and I find that it is very looked over in a lot of these Reddit forums. Let's move into question number 2. Light alcohol and impact on fitness and other lifestyle things discussion. I did a dry January for financial reasons, and at the same time, ETA mildly increased my calorie and protein intake. Hard to tell what it is, but I've made a lot better progress in my lifts over the last month. I was having 1 tall boy beer per week, which doesn't seem like it would have a major effect. Does anyone know if there's any research on light and mild alcohol intake in fitness, particularly muscle or strength gain? I'm also curious, outside of the gym, what have been the most useful lifestyle changes for you to support your fitness goals? Okay. I also took part in like a pretty much dry-ish, like 99% dry January. I'm actually going until, again, dry-ish until I go on vacation with my sister in April. I'm going to make a whole video talking about that experience and why and but we'll kind of touch on it now. There are plenty of studies that show the negative impact that alcohol can have on your training. This person is specifically asking about muscle and strength gains, and alcohol has been shown to inhibit muscle protein synthesis, aka kill your gains. Not like kill, like you cannot make any gains, but it does impact it negatively. Another huge part of this is that alcohol is going to interrupt your sleep. Like even though a lot of times when you drink alcohol, like you fall asleep faster, you're going to not get as much deep sleep, and you might even get sleep interruptions, like waking up in the middle of the night from blood pressure spikes. Now, this past year so far, it's February, but this past year I have been, where's my Fitbit at? I've been wearing my Fitbit to bed because I did really want to see this effect of alcohol on my sleep. And I did say that I had a dry-ish January. There was a day where we had alcohol. It was the NFC Championship game. By the time this video comes out, hopefully we've won the Super Bowl. But you can see a lot of my health markers and my overall daily readiness weren't that great. My Fitbit was like, girl, are you good? Are you alive? And the reason I bring this up is because sleep is where we're going to recover. If we have crappy sleep, we are not going to perform or adapt as well in the gym. And look, am I sitting here saying like, you should never drink or I'm never gonna drink again? No, I think it's a much more complex conversation than that based on many cultures and the integration of alcohol in there. But what I will say is that it's been incredibly informative and eye-opening for me to take a step back from my intake and see the actual like crossover from sleep into performance with alcohol intake. So I don't know if I have a clear answer here, but there is 100% a correlation. Next question. My squat form is awful. I'm looking for replacement exercises. Hey, I've been training for over a year and a half now and have been making great steady progress. The thing is that I have very stiff ankles, so my butt wink is awful, and whenever I increase the weights, my lower back hurts. Recently, I've started warming up my ankles more, which resulted in some odd pain that happens in my left ankle when I put a lot of weight on it. It comes and goes, but I feel like I injured myself with the stretching, so I'll lay off squats for a while. I train glutes and hamstrings separate from legs, so they're split into 2 different days, and I am looking for some advice on which exercises could train the same muscles as squats, so I don't completely neglect those muscles until I come back to squatting once I fix my form through flexibility training. Okay, there's a few things going on here. I have it listed on my notes here. Stiff ankles, butt wink, and low back pain with a weight increase in our squats. And then we also have a question of what exercises we can do in the meantime while working on our flexibility. Let's start there. So it sounds like with the squats, there is either an ankle or a hip or maybe both, like restriction or mobility joint limitation there. So if you still want a bilateral variation, I would work on box squats. It sounds like this person is a little bit more on the beginner side. So I would start with like a goblet hold, maybe then working into free weights front rack. If you're a little bit more advanced, you can absolutely do like a barbell back loaded box squat. That was really hard to say. There's a lot of B's. Another option, you could try a sumo squat because the wider and more externally rotated stance is going to have less ankle dorsiflexion, less hip flexion, which sounds like those things might be causing you an issue. You could also work in unilateral variations. So like any type of split squat, I would even say lunges, like anything knee dominant that you can program that doesn't cause you pain, go for it. Now let's go back to the joint restrictions. I will say, well, number one, I can't diagnose shit because I'm not a therapist, but there are definitely assessments or like mobility screens that I could do to give you a little bit more insight of what might be going on at the joint level. But I would have to see you. So we're just gonna like throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks here. Starting with the ankles, typically with ankle issues during squats, we're missing dorsiflexion, which is that knee over toe positioning. To help correct this, I would typically have people do an ankle dorsiflexion Pales Rails. This is essentially a drill where you're gonna hold a 2-minute passive stretch, relaxing the nervous system, letting it know that this is a safe range of motion to be in, and then we're gonna perform a contraction trying to get out of the movement and then into the movement deeper. This is basically helping us not only create more space in the joint, but also strengthen those end ranges so that we reduce the risk of injury when we come into those ranges of motion under force. Let's talk about the hip. Okay, so this could be almost any hip motion that's restricted, except extension. So basically, this could be a restriction in hip flexion, hip internal rotation, or hip external rotation. To understand why, let's look at the mechanics of a squat at the hip joint. So we have our pelvis, and then we have our femur, which inserts into the hip socket. So this is kind of what we're looking at when we're talking about hip mobility. We're looking at how the femur moves within the hip socket. So when you descend into a squat, you do need to have hip flexion. If we run out of space in hip flexion, we're typically going to pull from somewhere like the low back to get more range of motion. This is where you see a butt wink. Also in a squat, once we hit 90 degrees, we do need to access internal rotation, meaning the femur needs to internally rotate in the hip socket. If we don't have access to that range of motion, it's typically going to be pulled from somewhere else like the knee or the low back. And then finally, at the bottom of our squat, our hips do need to externally rotate. So once again, if we're lacking that range of motion, it's going to pull from somewhere else like the knees, ankles, or the low back. If you find that you have a restriction in any of those, send me a message and I will send you a corrective drill. Let's move on to our next question. My legs are always tired. How to recover better? Hey ladies, I've been lifting 3 times a week for the last 4 months. All good. But whenever I add running or Pilates to the mix, I find that my legs are just tired every single day. For running, it's calves, and for Pilates, it's quads. I work out 5 to 6 days a week. I'm eating about 2,000 to 2,100 calories, and I'm about 150 pounds. I drink a lot of water and electrolytes and get at least 110 grams of protein per day and 250 grams of carbs. Stretching and foam rolling are my weak points. I try to do them after every workout, but it's probably more like 50% of the time. It could be a lot worse, but I want to be able to enjoy Pilates and or running without feeling my legs burn out. Any tips? All right, so let's just like zoom out, get a bird's eye view of what this person's routine is. Strength training 3 times a week, and then it seems like we get 2 to 3 days of running and or Pilates in there. The recovery and nutrition look pretty darn good. I know that this person says they don't always stretch after their workouts. They could be better about that, but honestly, there's kind of mixed studies on if stretching post-workout even really leads to better recovery. It seems to be very individual. So like at first glance, maybe this person tries to add in like stretching after every workout, but that also might not help. But it's worth trying. But really what I'm gonna guess is that this comes down to a programming issue. It sounds like there might be too much volume either in your strength days, in your running, or maybe even in your Pilates class. So the first thing I would ask, what does your strength program look like? A lot of stuff out there that I've tried, there's just way more volume in strength workouts than you actually need. Honestly, a great strength workout is anywhere from like for the core of the workout, like 4 to 6, maybe 7 exercises done with enough volume to, you know, produce the adaptation that you're looking for. But a lot of times I see like, I don't know, 20 plus exercises in strength workouts. And that's when you're gonna have a little or a lot of volume, like too much volume. I would take a look at your split too and see if you can change things up there just to help better support the other activity that you want to do. And then kind of the same thing with the running, like how much running are you doing? Are we talking a mile? Are we talking 10 miles? Are you warming up and cooling down properly? And then going back to the strength work, are you implementing plyometrics, isometrics, which is going to be huge for your tendon and ligament and joint health? Are you implementing single leg exercises? Are you working on your hip mobility, not just in the sagittal planes? So flexion and extension. Are you actually also working on that rotational element? And then obviously Pilates, like I'm assuming you're taking a class or someone else is leading you, so you can't really control what's going on there. So we're just gonna not talk about it. But I would say like in general, looking at how much movement this is, I don't think that this falls into the realm of overtraining until we actually look at what's being programmed, like the meat and potatoes of it. So that would be my action plan, and that's it. If you're watching this, shoot me a message and we can chat more. All right, we have one more question. I'm not gonna lie, screenshotted this, I wrote down the question, and then I took no notes. So we're gonna freestyle this. Let's go. Is losing weight and current method has left me stalled. Hi all, I'm 5'2" and I weigh 116 pounds. My starting weight before the holidays was 123 and I spent the last month and a half at a calorie deficit, working out, Stairmaster weights, walking 6 times a week. I was losing about 1.5 pounds per week, but since hitting 116 pounds, my deficit and workouts have stalled any further weight loss. My goal weight is 112 pounds. Any tips for how to lose the last 4 pounds? And any thoughts on why after reaching 116, my deficit and exercise no longer was making progress? Thanks. Did this person lose 7 pounds in 6 weeks? That's a lot. That's a lot for somebody who is 5'2" and weighs 123 pounds going down to 116. That's actually really, really fast. It's hard without notes. Okay, it's hard to really say what's going on without seeing what your deficit is. Like if I had to guess, if you lost that much weight that quickly, you're probably in a fairly large deficit, which caused fairly rapid weight loss, I would say. Again, for someone of this size, the smaller your body is, obviously just like the less weight you have to lose fairly easily. You know, how do we want to approach this? There's a lot of ways to approach this question. I think first and foremost, what does that number on the scale mean to you? 112 pounds is their goal weight. Why 112 pounds? Like why that specific number? Is it a number you weighed before in the past when you liked the way that you looked? Is it what a BMI chart tells you is healthy? Is there, something else correlated with that number? I would ask first, why that number? Because if you've been doing weight training, ideally, hopefully, you're adding lean muscle mass to your body, which is fantastic. And there's going to be a host of different benefits there. But, at this point, when it comes down to adapting our workouts and our nutrition, and we're getting a little bit like to the bottom end of a healthy weight range, the scale isn't going to be the best measure of success because there's going to be a lot more going on body composition wise than the scale can tell you, or at least just a scale that tells you how much your whole meat sack weighs. I also want to say that losing, I typically call it like the last 5 pounds, but for her, it sounds like it's the last 4 pounds. That's tough. Like that's where you're getting really low in terms of your intake, maybe even body fat percentage wise. Like it just takes a lot of really, really meticulous tracking and effort. And for most people, like general population, that level of, I don't know, hyperfixation, getting down to that weight or body fat percentage is really, really challenging. And then even more challenging to maintain. You know, it's let's put it this way. It's the difference between going to your friend's birthday party and having a drink or two and eating the pizza there versus not. That lasts like 4 pounds. That's the life experiences, right? I just like to point that out because I think it's worthwhile for you to determine if it's worthwhile. I'm not going to sit here and be like, no, don't lose those last 4 pounds. Like that's disorder, that's bad or whatever. I'm just going to tell you like, it's not going to be easy. But to give you some actionable advice, if you want to continue progressing in this deficit, you just have to keep going. Deficits will have plateaus. It sounds like you've only been in it for 6 weeks. That's not a long period of time. You just have to keep going and be consistent. That being said, I would highly recommend thinking about all of the other points that we kind of discussed. That was unscripted. Hopefully that came out not jarbled. That was kind of fun. Let me know if you guys want this to be a series. I did a whole video on the Reddit, like petite fitness subreddit, and it blew up and everyone hates me over there, but that's fine. All right, that's the video. If you have any questions, leave them down below and I will see you in the next one.